Hello, everyone. So my project is on the blessings of the Lamanite Mission, and this rings really near and dear to my heart because my parents are from Mexico. So our family is very indigenous, and we're like 80% native to the tribes of the Americas. So I connect really well with this, and this is the Mexico City temple where my parents were sealed, and my parents are converts. So all of this kind of comes together, and I'll explain that at the end. And my topic's from Unit 7. It is Concept 2, the Lamanite Mission. And in my opinion, this type of doctrine can be branched under the doctrine of the gathering of Israel, which in my opinion is a supportive doctrine because it elaborates on the receiving of the gospel and like baptism and other saving ordinances. And it is a very timely doctrine as well. So it was prophesied by ancient prophets, and it is something that was meant to happen in the latter days. So two key concepts that I want to focus on are first, that the temporal issues such as legalities and politics between American settlers and the Native Americans impeded the efforts of the saints to preach among the Lamanites. So the tension between these two groups of people was completely out of the control of the saints. So that leads to concept 2, which is that the Lamanite mission may not have accomplished in its initial intentions in Joseph Smith's lifetime, but it brought about many blessings in the coming years for the saints, such as receiving a lot of converts along the way for these missionaries. And in addition to the saints understanding the physical gathering of Israel, the Lamanite mission ultimately helped saints comprehend the spiritual blessings of the doctrine of the gathering of Israel. So to help them gain a greater understanding of the spiritual aspects of this doctrine beyond the physical gathering, which they understood pretty well. And two scholarly articles, which I was able to find, are the first, Mission to the Lamanites, and this one basically goes into detail where the missionaries started, like Oliver Cowdery, Parley P. Pratt, and there's how they started preaching to the Native Americans in Buffalo, New York, and then went to Ohio, and then eventually Missouri, and how they were received really well by a lot of these Indian tribes. And then Light on the Mission to the Lamanites. This one kind of expands upon the political, social circumstances of this time. As I mentioned, the tension between Native Americans and American settlers, which was an impediment for these missionaries. And two prophetic talks that I really loved while studying this are first, The Lamanites Must Rise in Majesty and Power. This is by J. Thomas Fines. I don't know how to say his last name, but he was a general authority, and he gave this talk, and essentially he just goes through how the church has grown so much in Latin America and how these are the descendants of the Lamanites, and this is the fulfillment of so much prophecy found in the scriptures. And then the second talk is by President Nelson, which I feel like a lot of us have read, The Gathering of Scattered Israel. He talks about gathering scattered Israel on both sides of the veil and the Abrahamic covenant and all those blessings. And these are my DNC verses. I can just go ahead and read them. So it says, "And now behold, I say unto you that you shall go unto the Lamanites and preach my gospel unto them, and inasmuch as they receive thy teachings, thou shalt cause my church to be established among them. And now behold, I say unto you that it is not revealed, and no man knoweth where this city shall be built, but it shall be given hereafter. Behold, I say unto you that it shall be on the borders by the Lamanites." And then DNC 30, the second verse that I have, is actually the Lord basically giving Peter Whitmer Jr. his calling to also join Oliver Cowdery on this Lamanite mission. And I just like to focus on this last part, which says, "For I have given unto him power to build up my church among the Lamanites." So this was definitely a calling from God. And they had that promise, the Lord would help them. And this is the covenant that all of these missionaries signed prior to going out to the Native American lands, essentially promising that they would bring the gospel and go for this specific purpose. And I like to read this quote. It says, "I, Oliver Cowdery, being commanded of the Lord God to go forth into the Lamanites to proclaim glad tidings of great joy unto them by presenting unto them the fullness of the gospel and of the begotten Son of God, and also to rear up a pillar as a witness where the temple of God shall be built in the glorious New Jerusalem." So they understood their purpose really well, and I love that they were very committed. They understood the magnitude of their calling, and I just like this depiction of the gathering of Israel both in ancient times and the early church times and in modern times. I found it on Google. And this is a scripture in the Book of Mormon that I'm going to skip due to the sake of time. But this is a quote from President Hinckley. So tying this back to my family in Mexico City, where my parents were sealed, this quote is taken from President Hinckley's talk at the Mexico City temple dedication. At the time, this was the first temple to be built in Mexico. And I'm going to read some excerpts from this article that covers this experience. And here it goes. As he began his address in one of the sessions, President Hinckley spoke with a quivering voice as he testified that souls from the other side of the veil were present. I quote, "All rooms of the temple are filled with faithful Latter-day Saints," he said, "but I am convinced there is a larger unseen congregation participating with us." End quote. President Hinckley had been speaking several minutes. He paused and explained that there was another person from the other side of the veil he had not mentioned. In a strong voice filled with emotion and joy, President Hinckley exclaimed, "Welcome, Father Lehi. Oh, how your heart must rejoice." So I get really emotional every time I read that because that's very near and dear to my family, and also it's something that my dad told me. So one key takeaway I'd like you to get from this whole theme is that we are all part of God's eternal family, and in fulfillment to his promises, he will gather us and never forsake us. The prophet Joseph Smith not only restored gospel truths, covenants, and authority, but his efforts led to the ultimate restoration of many nations, kindreds, tongues, and peoples to the knowledge of the truth as we see today in the church. And we can all be partakers of these restoration blessings. Thank you. Oh, there's my timer. And I'm so grateful for these blessings. And yeah, that's all I'd like to share with you guys. Thanks for listening.